Today marks 1 year since I was sworn in as governor. In preparing for today, I took some time to look back at what I shared with Oregonians a year ago about my hopes for Oregon and my approach to this job. Last year, I said that this job would mean waking up every day focused on delivering results for Oregonians. I spoke about strengthening connections with Oregonians from every part of our state, increasing accountability in state government, and asking everyone to come together to be part of solutions that will make a difference. This job as governor is about taking on our biggest challenges and making things better. In my first year, I have called out housing and homelessness, behavioral health, education, and community safety as top priorities. And that was based on what I'd heard from Oregonians on the campaign trail. And these priorities were further reaffirmed all last year on my One Oregon listening tour, during which I visited all 36 counties and had the opportunity to meet with nearly 1,000 Oregonians where they live and work. I believe, thanks to Oregonians working together, providing feedback, and innovating within their own communities, we have collectively made progress in each of the areas that I just mentioned. There's always more work to do. Believe me, I always think there's more work to do, but progress is happening. Today, we released preliminary data on the outcomes connected to my homelessness emergency order that I issued last year. We made meaningful progress to help more Oregonians who are at risk of losing their housing or who are currently sleeping outside and are ready to move into shelter, starting on their way to stable housing. We have also been laser focused on finding new ways to increase housing production across Oregon. We paved the way to change how Oregon students are taught to read, as well as started a conversation about how we have to fund our schools. And I'm very pleased to announce today that all 197 school districts across the state have applied for the grant funding from House Bill 3198 to improve how Oregon schools teach kids to read and write. Every district and every charter school has applied for that money. Some of the other things we've worked on, we have cut wait times for training law enforcement officers. We've cut that in half. And we launched a statewide strategic enforcement initiative on fentanyl. In a week or so, I plan to join the city of Portland and Multnomah County in declaring a fentanyl emergency in the Portland Central City, where we know a concentration of the drug is being trafficked for statewide distribution. The Portland Central City Task Force has asked the legislature to ban public use of controlled substances and reduce barriers to prosecuting individuals who are selling drugs. And we also are working to expand treatment options. Just last week, I announced a joint effort with Multnomah County, the City of Portland, and Central City Concern to secure over 70 new treatment beds in Portland, as well as a $25 million partnership with our Medicaid organizations, our coordinated care organizations, toward expanding behavioral health capacity for young Oregonians across the state. So progress is happening on many fronts. And we had a very productive year on a variety of issues, and I encourage everyone to look online. We have a fuller list of all the things we've been working on. So I think many of you know that I played a lot of sports when I was growing up. And I think that experience of teamwork, focused on an end goal, and a willingness to push harder when you're tired is frankly really appropriate for this moment. As I cross my 1-year mark as governor, I'm reminded of that feeling that this is the time to dig deeper and keep going. And I know that success does not belong to one person or one administration. As Oregonians, we can and will continue to do hard things together and be successful. Speaking of hard things, I'm incredibly grateful to so many Oregonians local government leaders, housing providers, outreach staff, homeless service providers, shelter operators, who over the last year did the heavy lifting to meet the emergency goals set forth in my homelessness state of emergency. That emergency tied specific outcomes to the emergency declaration. When I declared the emergency, I told Oregonians that it would be the first step toward significantly impacting and reducing homelessness in our communities. As of yesterday, we received preliminary results on those goals, and those data points will be finalized by the end of February. But those preliminary results show that we prevented 8,886 households from becoming homeless across our state, exceeding our goal by 136 households. We stood up 1,032 new shelter beds, exceeding the goal of 432 beds. And we rehoused 1,293 households, exceeding our goal by 93. Exceeding the goals we put out there. That's local communities doing the work. And I want to thank Oregonians for meeting those goals. These outcomes are a critical threshold of progress and a proof point that we can deliver results. All of us working together, and frankly, we just have to keep up the pace. So now we embark on the next step, armed with a stronger infrastructure and lessons learned from the first year tackling this work head on with emergency powers. The 2023 HUD point-in-time count, though I want to point out, was conducted prior to the start of our homelessness state of emergency, estimates that there are 20,000 people in Oregon experiencing homelessness across our state. And this is likely an undercount. Homelessness is still very much an emergency. Consequently, today, I'm signing Executive Order 2402, which continues the homelessness state of emergency. Specific outcomes tied to this new order will be outlined in the month ahead, working with our local partners. Additionally, in concert with this extension, I'm signing Executive Order 2403, which encompasses the second phase of our work that directed all state agencies to prioritize preventing and reducing homelessness. The new order reestablishes the Interagency Council on Homelessness and tasks them with operationalizing a roadmap for state agencies to expand an outcomes-driven approach to reducing and preventing homelessness statewide. But as we know, we cannot address homelessness in our state without addressing Oregon's acute shortage of housing. These issues are linked. The resources we put into the system of homelessness services will not have maximum effectiveness unless we have housing units to move people into when they are ready to do so. The impact of our housing shortage does not stop at homelessness. Economic prosperity and thriving communities are all at stake when we talk about housing production. My time on the road listening to Oregonians last year was very sobering on this issue, particularly in our smaller communities. Healthcare providers are struggling to hire needed professionals. Basic services like fire, police, teachers are facing chronic workforce shortages. It's more the same for the ag sector and for our other parts of our economy. What the common thread is? That common thread is housing. Employers are losing potential hires because people don't have a place to live. Others are forced to commute sometimes hours, which leads to high workforce turnover, and some are leaving the state entirely because of our housing supply crisis. The situation's untenable, and the entire state is facing consequences as a result. That is why my top priority for the upcoming legislative session is a $500 million housing production package. My proposal is a focused approach with a menu of needed tools funded with one-time dollars. To jumpstart the housing production we need to see across the state. I look forward to partnering with our legislative leadership to get that done. It absolutely has to get done. Once more, I want to thank Oregonians across the state for your contributions in the past year to solving problems, to stepping up, to making progress. You have inspired me. We're going to keep going. I look forward to continuing to work with you. Let's keep going. Let's do this together. Let's take on our challenges and let's keep making progress. So thank you. And before I take any questions here from the folks in the press who are here, I'm going to sign the 2 executive orders here that I just spoke about. So, thank you. Get this. There we go. All right. Thank you, everyone. So Elizabeth is going to make sure I get all the questions in. So Elizabeth.
I have a question from Jefferson Public Radio. It's kind of a two-parter. How many cities reached out to you seeking an extension of the emergency order? Was that a big reason why you decided to extend the order? And are there new goals you've already set for this extension, or are those what's being announced by the end of February?
Well, thank you, Jefferson Public Radio. Thank you for the interest, and thank you for following what we're doing here today. I think there is agreement across the state for all the communities who've been stepping up on this emergency order that we have work to do, that we are still in a crisis situation. Together, we were able, with legislative help, to guarantee that we have the resources through the biennium to keep going forward on the resources that we have put in play across the state. We have built an infrastructure to respond in a more coordinated fashion, and we are funding that to keep that. I will say that with the extension of the emergency order, we're going to continue maintaining what we're doing, but I also want to point out that there are some resources that we continue to need from the legislature. We've asked for $65 million to continue to support other shelters who were existing prior to my emergency order last year, who could be losing funding because of one-time federal money going away, that are part of our system in the state to provide shelter. So we need that $65 million to support those shelters, and about another $35 million to do additional rent assistance. So my message is, we're going to keep going. Communities have said they want that support. They are all in, and we need continued help from the legislature to do the work. So thank you.
You talk of building more affordable housing. Is recovery housing included in that? Addiction goes hand in hand with homelessness.
Thank you for that question. So making sure that we have different pathways to recovery for individuals who are needing support for their addiction. I do believe recovery housing is a strong tool. We've had some conversations with advocates. I think that's in addition to other types of housing that we're talking about. But if we think about it as a treatment option, when someone needs to be in a setting where they're going to be more supported to be successful in their recovery, I think we need to do that. And so one of the things that's going to be a focus for me in this coming year is really talking about the capacity of treatment options. We're in the midst of an analysis of looking at where we are with different types of treatment facilities. Recovery housing, I think, has to be a part of that because we have to figure out what those things that will work for people and provide it to communities who need it. And so I look forward to that conversation in the new year.
Will the renewed orders funding also be based on PIT count numbers?
So the PIT count numbers that I mentioned in my remarks, thank you. So we had PIT count numbers before we even started last year's emergency order. We have new PIT count numbers that don't reflect the work we've done this year yet. What I know is we have been successful in this first year of building an infrastructure across the state that focuses on prevention, shelter, and rehousing in a very coordinated fashion. We have the resources from the legislature to continue that through the biennium, but let's not lose any players along the way. We have some other shelter capacity that we need to support. So this emergency order is saying the crisis is not over. We've made good progress. We have to keep maintaining that because we still have work to do.
Governor, I think it was 2015 when the city of Portland declared a housing emergency, and I don't think anyone thought it would still be in place. It is. What is the hard line in your head at this point for when Oregon is out of a homelessness state of emergency? Does one exist? I know you said you're working on metrics for this current order, but I don't know if I'm hearing that there's going to be some goal we're going to hit where all of a sudden it's over. I mean, how do you think about when Oregon will be out of it and when the emergency order can be rescinded?
I think when we talk to Oregonians on the road, people know that we have work to do here, that even though we're making progress and we're starting to see more folks having a place to go instead of living on the streets, but we're not there yet. When 20,000 plus Oregonians, according to the most current PIT count, point in time count, are saying people are experiencing homelessness, and we know that's an undercount, that's way too many people, right? So we can't take our foot off the gas here. We have to continue to do what we're doing. Now, remember, with the emergency order and the very specific community goals that we set and the resources we put towards it, nearly 10,000 Oregonians were either prevented from becoming homeless or were rehoused out of shelter. That's progress. I don't know where we're gonna be until the next time we see a PIT count, but I know that we still have a problem. And we know it's working, what we're doing is working. Let's keep doing more of it. And we have the resources to maintain it, thanks to the legislature. And so we're gonna be focused on doing the same things we've been doing to get more people rehoused, to keep people from becoming homeless in the first place, and keeping those shelters there as that transitional spot. Those things have to continue to work.
Thanks. Did every community meet its individual goal with the money it received? And are there any communities that did exceptionally well that other places should be looking at as a model for this next round of funding?
I will be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. I've seen only the aggregate numbers for the different categories. Certainly some communities had more success, and so they might have made up for some gaps, but we have said to every community in their contracts that we expect them to meet those goals. They might be off by a number or two, but what we are seeing across the board is success. And I think at a previous availability, we talked a little bit about rehousing. I think a couple months ago about rehousing was going to be the hardest one. What we did at the end of last year was everybody stepped it up. I had actual meetings with landlord groups and housing authorities, and we put out emails and messages saying, landlords, housing providers, please step up. Do you have a unit or two? And honestly, I was surprised that we were able to meet our statewide goal. I think that showed a lot of extra effort in the end of the year to say, we gotta get folks housed. Now we have to maintain that, and we're gonna need to continue to do that because it's no good just to have a shelter bed. If someone is ready to get housed, we need to get folks rehoused. That also frees up another shelter bed for someone who needs it. So additional focus on rehousing in the new year is gonna be really critical.
Housing production, your emphasis seems to be on the $500 million. Will there be companion legislation, a version of which died at the end of last session, that would provide incentives and make it easier for communities to promote housing development?
Yeah.
Is there an agreement on such legislation?
Since the end of the last legislative session, my team has been working with a lot of different organizations trying to refine and improve upon the bill that came up in the legislative session. It's a different bill, still a menu of tools. I will be introducing a bill when bills come out that will have $500 million attached to the bill. It will continue to have the Housing and Accountability Production Office funded, which, by the way, one of the reasons we need resources there is we want to set up ready-made templates for people to do construction. That takes time. We want to help local communities do their permitting faster. That proposal includes money for infrastructure. We heard last year that one of the reasons that production is not happening is that there are infrastructure barriers. There's going to be money to incentivize for infrastructure. There will be some conversation about land supply. It is one piece of it, and what I can say about the land supply conversation is we've continued to improve the proposal, and if passed the way it currently sits, would be the strongest proposal to guarantee affordability in new construction in the country. So we are very excited about the bill. We're looking forward to everyone getting behind it. We've been having great conversations with legislators. It's up to the legislature to fund it. I believe the $500 million in one-time funding is an essential catalytic investment to get us on the path to new production. And I hope the legislature can be a partner in that.
From the Oregonian, what prompted you to take a lead on issues in Portland and Multnomah County, and will this level of involvement continue throughout your term?
Well, there's a whole lot of reasons for that. When I was on the road talking to Oregonians, they were always asking, how are things in Portland? We know that our major city has to be successful. I know that we see just the sheer number of people in the city of Portland and Multnomah County who are struggling right now is very obvious, right? A lot of people live there. We need to focus there. The Portland Central City Task Force brought the private sector, the governmental sector, the community sector together and said, what can we do together to make sure Portland's on a better track? And we are focused on meeting the goals of those 10 action points that were released in December. It's important for the state, and more importantly, it's important for the people who are struggling right now in Multnomah County. People who are ready for recovery. We got to make sure they have a place to go. Folks who are living on the streets, we have to make sure those shelter services are there. This is about humanity as well as good governance and supporting the entire state by making sure our largest city is successful. And Dick gets a special shout out for spending a lot of time on the One Oregon Listening Tour with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. I have several dozen questions, but we should be done by dinner time.
Okay.
To change topics slightly, one of your missions has been to revitalize and make state government more efficient. What has been accomplished? Are you pleased with what's been accomplished, and what hasn't gotten done that needs to be done?
Thank you for bringing that up. And I do think this is a longer conversation because I want to make sure I get some of the details right for you. I am pleased with the progress. I think particularly when you're coming out of an international pandemic and you're tired and you're not sure what your North Star is, setting some goals for state agencies to think about their vacancy rates, the kind of conversations they're having on a regular basis with one-on-one conversations between supervisors and line employees, to talk about, have you done your strategic planning, whether it's equity and diversity or being prepared for a disaster. These are really basic things. And what we're seeing in the dashboards that are tracking these things is we're seeing reductions in vacancy rates. We are seeing people focused on having those one-on-one conversations. We're seeing commitments getting done on strategic planning. It's the basic, boring stuff of government that I think is actually getting people excited again about doing the best job we can within state government. And so I look forward to, we can spend some time maybe walking through the different things that we're tracking. And what we're hearing is enthusiasm that, okay, now we know there are some things we need to be doing to be a better functioning state enterprise, and I'm very excited about people's response to it, and I think we're seeing progress.
So there's a lot of focus and talk on building more affordable housing units, but what about the wraparound services and staffing for those services to ultimately keep people housed?
Yes, I think that's a really great point. So we want to make sure that when we talk about housing production, we're talking about the different types of housing that we need. The state has a huge investment, $650 million this biennium, on affordable housing for very low-income households, right? There has to be some public subsidy for that. Some of those units will also have supportive services connected with them. If you are using that housing because of your income status, that doesn't necessarily mean you need additional services, but some people do. So making sure that those supportive services for some units are available. We need to talk about workforce housing, right? We have folks who are like, look, I have a pretty good salary, but I literally can't find a place to live. Those kind of folks don't need services. They just need an affordable unit, right? So by getting more different types of housing out there, we're going to expand the continuum of housing in a way that will meet the different needs of people better. And when we put forth the supportive housing measure in the session, we made sure that there were operating dollars to go along with that. If you are doing supportive housing units, you have to make sure that there can be the wraparound services. It's not an either-or conversation. But again, that's not all the units we need, but it is an important piece of the equation.
Thanks. In regards to the recent audit of Oregon Housing Community Services rental assistance, this is a state agency that you're entrusting with these new executive orders and the previous ones. Oregon Housing Community Services claimed it served 67,000 Oregonians with that rental assistance during the pandemic. Auditors say they have no documents to prove that, and both agencies are standing by their claims. So, typical situation where state agencies, are they functioning well in this situation?
I think the audit was a really important analysis of what we did during the pandemic. And I think the agency, frankly, just even because of the questions that the auditors were asking, have continued to improve their processes internally. I have confidence in the agency that they are able to track data, that we are using money efficiently. I think the pandemic itself and what we did around emergency rent assistance was frankly unprecedented. I can't imagine we'll see that kind of influx from the federal government anytime near soon. But we had to learn from that. And so what I'm hearing from the agency is, yeah, we need better protocols. We learned from that. It's impacting how we're doing our work now in a more positive way. So the audit was a spotlight on a certain point in time, and we are learning from that. And I have confidence in the agency that they can actually track and make sure our money is being spent well.
Why are those two numbers different?
Well, again, I think in the pandemic, when we were moving upwards of $400 million in rent assistance in a very compacted timeline, the goal was to make sure people stayed housed. Did we have all the data we wanted at the end of the day? No. Do I think it primarily reached the people who needed it? Yes. And we're building on the recommendations from the audit to continue to make sure we do our job better going forward. And I have faith in the agency to do that.
Is there really accountability, though, if you have one agency say one thing, the other say another, and the public doesn't know what's real?
I think that was a point-in-time audit, and that what I do know is the agency is very clear that they need to improve how they do their business, and I think they're doing that. And I'm going to hold them accountable if they're not. So I do appreciate the question. I think the audits are always really important. I read the whole Measure 110 audit as well. Audits are important. We learn from them, we continue to do our work better, and we move forward. And I think that's the case for that one as well. So
I have a question from the Oregonian. How does your leadership style differ from your predecessors?
I've just been too busy doing my job with a lot of great people. All I know is that I love the details of this job. I love the people I work with. I'm so impressed with what the Oregonians are doing. And I want to continue to hear from people. And I want to thank folks who have written and emailed and called and said, this is something that matters to me. We pay attention to that. We're trying to respond to that. This is your government. And I'm going to work every day to make sure we can make you proud. So thanks.
Lauren, I think I'll sort of follow up on that. You said you're going to take the lessons that you learned this year moving forward. And I'm curious if there's been anything that you've learned this year. You've been in state government for a long time that has prompted you to pivot your path or rethink your strategy to anything.
I think the assumptions I came into office on, that if you provide clear goals and plans, it helps people do their job better, and you can achieve the outcomes you want. I think we're seeing that with the emergency order. Look, it's been tough in spots, right? You're asking folks who are already tired doing the work to say, work together better, try to hit goals. People have hit their stride. They are getting there, right? So I think, again, when you set goals and have plans for folks, people step up. They want that leadership. I think the one thing that has been enlightening since taking over this job is how we pace it, how we make sure people can move at the pace you want to set. The elements of state government are not as flexible as we always want them to be. Contracting and hiring and all the things that you want to have done well with accountability sometimes don't move as quickly as you need to move, right? So for me, it's adjusting to make sure that we can continue to make progress without breaking ourselves along the way, right? Here's what I know. People want things to be different. And when people say, hey, we need to slow down, I try to slow down. But then okay, if we have to add a month or two, let's do that. But let's keep moving forward because we have to continue to solve problems for folks.
One more question. Peter?
This goes back. Sorry. This goes back to the summit last month, where you sat down with Kate Lieber and the other person heading that particular
Rob
subgroup.
Stewart?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you expect, and of course they presented their recommendations regarding Measure 110, but they don't go as far as some people would like. Do you expect the legislative committee, who of course is, which is co-chaired by Senator Lieber, to go beyond that when they have not yet presented legislation for consideration in this session, but I expect they will.
So the Portland Central City Task Force, particularly its community safety recommendations, we were going to solve the entire state problem with that task force, but we wanted to focus on the central city. And so that's why you see the recommendations that we hope the legislature will take up clearly: public use, enforcement tools. Those are impacting safety within Portland and frankly the entire state. I think those are going to happen. I think we have good support for those. They're, I think, very fundamental to improving, community safety around the state going forward. One of the things that's important, what the legislature is doing, is they are having thorough public process to talk about what adjustments we can make to Measure 110 that will continue to improve the situation for people who are in addiction. My job is to make sure we're doing our part to get more treatment online. I just talked about capacity. We're trying to understand where we need to go there. That's why we work so hard for those 70 units in Portland. And by the way, I just want to say about those 70 units in Portland, it's a new day, the way the state, the city, and the county are working together. Think about those 70 beds. There was a piece of property going up for auction, and because the city, the county, and the state, with Central City Concern, are working so much better together, we turned around some money in a very fast timeline to acquire that property so there can be 70 new SUD beds in Portland. That is partnership, that's collaboration. I think that's an added bonus of what came out of the Central City Task Force. Now, when it comes to the legislature, it's their job to change the statute. It's their job to put a proposal out there that's meeting different needs. I think they're going to do that. We are watching. I think they're doing the right process. And I think that they know that things have to be different, but we have to take care of people. And this is what we heard on the road. Addiction is impacting all of our communities. It's not just a safety issue. It's a health issue. It's a human issue. People want things to work better. And that's all I've said to the legislature. Put a proposal out there that will actually improve things. Let's not get caught up in the politics. Let's talk about outcomes that matter for people. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they put forward. And I want to walk with them and get that done, because that's what our state is asking for. Thank you, everyone. Very much appreciate your time today, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you.